There we go. Live. Let me do one of these doohickeys again. All right, howdy everybody. Welcome to the Where to Hunt podcast. My name is Eric. I'm your host, and let's see here. We are live, coming at you from the Where to Hunt podcast studio. So, real quick before we get into the topic of discussion, I have Anthony Heller is my step-in co-host for the night.
What's up?
Poor Greg is just dying on a couch somewhere, probably. I'm sure he's watching. Hating his life for being
Sorry,
sick.
Greg. Thanks for letting me take your place.
We love
tonight.
you, buddy. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Don't worry. It smells
Feel
just
better.
as bad sitting next to Anthony. So, okay, before we dive into it, call out to our sponsors. You know, the show wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for Backwoods Grind Coffee. They give me the energy to do the show. So, big shout out to those guys. If you want to check out their coffee, I always say go to their website, and I'll go ahead and share that with you on the screen. Backwoodsgrind.com. You can browse some of their different blends that they have. And what I like about them most, I think, is when you order their coffee, it gives you the option. I'll show you. It gives you the option to show or to pick like how you like your coffee. So choose an option. You want whole bean, fine for espresso, medium for drip, coarse for French press. So I'll do a little bit of both. I'll do medium for my drip machine, but then I also love my French press on the weekends because I feel like I'm treating myself or something. And right when you order it, they'll grind it up for you based on how you want it, and it's fresh. It's super fresh. They won't grind it until you order it the way that you want it. So it's coffee on demand, basically. And if you want to save some money, you can enter in code. What's our code for those guys? W2H Podcast will save you 10%. Switching gears and switching shoes, switching boots. I got to wear these boots out with Anthony the other day. Not the Royal Zips, they're the Wellies. But no offense, Anthony, my boots were a lot taller than yours.
They were.
And so I felt pretty confident going into any water. And we did get into some, but it wasn't too deep or anything. But if it would have been, I was okay.
I commented multiple times how I really like how they're actually all rubber.
Yep.
Whereas now, like, you look at the mainstream market boots like Lacrosse and Muck, and they got that like neoprene on the outside, and that kind of sucks. I hate that because A, it rips easier, and B, it catches burrs a lot more.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
all
right.
those
You said you
burrs
have the little cloth on the
Yeah.
brim of the boot, right?
on the brim of the boot, but
Yeah,
the
you're like,
whole
"What the
left and
heck?"
right,
It's just-
right side of it.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
cloth.
It's that neoprene. Yeah, and the cloth. Yeah. So I don't know. I do like those gum leaves. I might have to get me a pair.
So you take a look at them. So if you want to save some money on shipping and you like free shipping, I'm playing on words there, you can save money on the shipping costs by entering in code W2H2019. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into our topic of the week. This week we're talking about saddle hunting. It seems to be a pretty popular topic. Sorry, getting some comments coming through. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And when you said that it's like, you can hear this.
No,
Okay.
that's cool. I'm good.
You said, yeah, I'll bring my saddle instead of the tree stand. I was like, okay, well, this is kind of exciting because now I can actually try it out. And so you're going to want those in if a caller comes through, but
Oh, okay. Sure.
you don't need them at the moment per se.
Okay.
But in any event, like I was really happy that you had a couple of these. So you had two different brands, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I got the Arrow Hunter and the Tethered.
And
So-
which one did you get first?
The Tethered.
Okay.
So that was
that's the one that I got
very
to
good
use.
marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they have good marketing, and then Arrow Hunter is the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Arrow's
Yeah, and
one
those
with,
are
like,
kind of
the-
the two main brand. There's one other line out there right now that I'm seeing a lot of, and that's Trophy Line.
Okay.
They were in it years and years ago, but then they fell off. And now with the resurgence of saddle hunting, they're starting to come back more and more. It seems like that's the case, or at least that's what I've heard from other people who use saddles.
Okay.
But yeah, I have the Tethered Mantis, which is what they came out with, I think, like 2 years ago. I bought it last year. And then this year, I'm running the Arrow Hunter Kestrel Flex, which is like their nicest, highest end model one. And then that Trophy Line's one's out there. And then there's a bunch of other like kind of homemade ones that you can do and stuff like that. There's a lot of
there's a lot
DIYs
of
out there.
like linemen. It's like what linemen use, right?
It's
Or
what
tree,
linemen and arborists.
Arborists. I was
Yeah.
thinking tree cutters.
Yeah,
but
that's who. So Arrow Hunter is actually an arborist company.
And then they just
So-
brand that out to the hunters.
Yeah, I forget the actual name of the company. I forget what it is, but yeah, their hunting brand is Arrow Hunter. So
Okay.
They put some camo on it, kind of doctored it up a little bit to fit hunters specifically, and then, but they were already making them for whatever 30, 40 years before that
Sure.
for arborists, and they still do. Like that's still their main line of work.
Yeah,
is
that's a
arborists.
bigger industry, right?
It's a much larger
Yeah.
industry. I mean, yeah, they're like, from what I understand, they're top end in that area, and they're out in Oregon. So
Don't let them hear you say Oregon.
Oregon.
There you go, Oregon.
Oregon.
I only know that because I've been to Oregon, and I said Oregon, and they're like, it's not Oregon.
Oh man, yeah, it's kind of like Wisconsin.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, they're out there, and that's where like the huge timber industries are and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah,
That makes
that's why
sense. So they get
yep.
heavily used. And so it's interesting. So we had, maybe with this is a good time, we can dive into, I put something out on Instagram, poll or whatever it's called, or ask me a question. And so we did get a number of questions about some of these things. We can just go through these one by one for a little bit until we get some callers, and then we'll interact that way. But one of the first questions was, isn't it just a fad? Is it hard to it's hard to imagine a comfortable sit all day in one of these things? And so there's ways that you can make it more comfortable, right?
Yeah, for sure. So just a quick note. I want to throw three things in really fast. One, I started saddle hunting I got mine last October.
Okay.
So in that tethered, I had about 30 to 40 sits in there. I hunted pretty much really hard through October and November last year and December and January, and I didn't get a deer. I didn't get a buck. I was chasing a couple specific deer. Didn't get one, so I had a lot of time in that tethered. And then this year I've been running that Arrow Hunter. I got that in mid-June-ish.
And so what made you want to try a different one?
So actually, I was talking with Arrow Hunter at a show, and we got talking about different hunts and stuff like that. And turns out that the guy lives pretty close to me, so we went on a couple hunts, and then he ended up just saying, "Hey, do you want one?"
Really?
So
you're like,
we'll
rock on.
So yeah, full disclosure, they just gave me the saddle. But it was I tried it on first, and there's some differences in them, and we'll get into them. Like they're subtle, but they can have a pretty big impact. So there's that. So I wanted to say that's how long I've been saddle hunting.
Okay.
And that's kind of how many sits. I wanted to say that I am like kind of partnered up with Arrow Hunter, but I am going to also keep this as like honest and true as I can. I don't believe in sugarcoating anything, because there are some problems with the Arrow Hunter saddle, but there are also some problems with the tethered saddle. They all have their pros and cons, just like anything.
Yep.
And then,
so
I don't know. I did want to say, do we want to kind of cover what saddle hunting is?
Yeah, that's
some
probably
people don't even know.
Okay, that's probably a good place to start.
Okay, so
I have a tendency of getting way ahead.
No, that's fine.
Maybe it's assumed, but for those that don't, let's take a quick pit stop. You're right.
Sure. Okay, so generally what a saddle is, if you don't know and you're just listening to this, it is a kind of it's the bottom half of your tree stand safety harness. That's literally pretty much what it is. Yep. So take off the shoulder straps and just those 3 straps, the one that goes around your waist and then the 2 that go around your legs. Put kind of webbing or like fabric from the outside of your hips around your butt, and that's what a saddle is. And then how you get in a tree is you attach a rope to a tree. That a rope kind of adjusts in length and then attaches to what's called a bridge, which is another rope that's on your saddle.
But it's kind of like, for lack of better terms here, soldered in on.
And so the rope that's attached to a tree then attaches to your bridge, and that's what holds you in place. And then you stand on a platform, or when we hunted, we just stood on the top steps of our climbing sticks, and the tension from you leaning back keeps you hooked onto the tree.
Sure.
So
it takes that second when I was doing it. You're like, okay, you can lean back now.
Yeah,
like,
I know. I saw you. You're like,
all right, I trust it because I've done some things before. But got it.
Yeah, being terrified. So that's essentially what saddle hunting is, and that's like a general overview. And if you want to dive into that more, then just go on YouTube, and there's plenty of videos.
Well, that's good to know. I'm glad we took a second to kind of clarify what that actually is. So
it's just when I tell people I saddle hunt, they're like, "What's that?"
it's a weird concept to get. So like it is a weird concept, and the biggest concern. And so one of the other questions that we'll get to here. And so no, I don't know that it's a fad. I think it's going to be a preference thing. I think it's going to be situational. There's certain situations where you can use this to get into various spots that maybe you couldn't with the climber or a hang on. And maybe I don't know which came first here. I think the hanger came up first, and then the climber. If we think back to tree stands, and at some point someone may have asked, well, is this climber a fad, or is this it's just another thing to add to your arsenal of tools and how you approach your hunt, I think. So I don't know that maybe it's fad like because it's kind of just coming into the market and emerging and people are trying it out. So there's a lot of chatter.
I think, I would agree with that. And you don't know what the big boys in the hunting world, the tree stand makers, what they're going to do about it. I mean, Lone Wolf just came out with a saddle platform. Mm-hmm. They're not even fighting it. They're like, well, let's just
let's just parry with it.
Whereas, I mean, you might want to look at other tree stands, but I think there's a lot of people who've just grown up hunting tree stands and they're just going to stick with hunting tree stands and they don't see the comfort. And saddles are expensive to get into. It's not a $50 buy.
Sure.
And you're set. Like you can go to Fleet Farm or whatever.
Well, the safety component I thought was fascinating. You described it as it's a safety harness without the upper half. Yeah. And so when you're in this thing, you're in. Like you're stuck. You're good. I mean, sure, there's probably ways you could F it up and fall out of the tree if you release your carabiner or I don't know.
If you didn't, if you unhook for sure.
But this stool I'm sitting on isn't very effing comfortable. After sitting here all night, I'm like, get me out of this damn thing. I will say that the saddle was more comfortable than what I'm sitting on actively right at this moment.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how comfortable it's. You have to try it. So I mean, if you're really wondering this and you don't want to spend, I think that, I mean, they run like $200 and you don't want to spend that, go to a trade show.
Yep.
Go to a hunting show if you can, and somebody's probably going to be there with one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Try it on. And they have the nice setups there where you can actually use the product. That's what I did. So actually I tried an Arrow one at Deer Fest last summer. And there's a photo on my Instagram page of doing that. So let me just take one more stab at the comfortability piece of it, because when I was sitting there with you, it would have felt great if I could put my knees on the tree, because that would have created that juxtapose of sitting, right? Trying to show people here what I'm.
Sure, it's like an L shape.
Yeah. So you had said maybe knee pads, and maybe there's some certain ones that are better to use than others, but you just took your hand warmer and strapped that around the tree to give some comfort.
So I'm trying to be. I always kind of. Like my hunting style is always start with the closest place first and then build your way in. Mm-hmm. And my saddle hunting style is the same way. I start with the cheapest way I can and build my way into what I want. So, I mean, there was one day I was just sitting out there. I was like, man, I really want to just like kind of sit. And if you ever think about like if somebody's trying to imagine this and they're listening to it, it's like a one-man hammock that's hanging down from a tree.
Okay.
It's kind of like, and you're like strapped in. So, and then your knees want to go. Like they want to be driven, just momentum, kind of physics want you to go towards the tree.
Which stabilizes you too.
Yeah. So then I was like, I want knee pads or something. I couldn't figure it out. And then I was like, I have my hand warmer muff and I can just strap that around the tree and then just use that. So that kind of became my go-to until it gets like
real cold and you want it. I mean, you guess you could have your hands in it, but then
And then I got an old crappy muff that's full of burrs that I just
you just bring that along.
I just
that's
bring
smart.
that along.
And I thought that was a pretty industrious way to do it. Jared Norwood, who I was talking to on my way home, just commented he's had full 4-day sits, 4 full-day sits in a saddle, and he loves it. He calls it Tree Cowboys. Attaboy, Jared.
Nice, that's a good one. Tree Cowboy. Yeah, I mean, you can. Do we want to keep going on comfort? Because there's a couple other things.
Yeah, I would like to actually. Because the one I had, I kept wanting to like pull it down to get it to cover my ass cheeks more, and it didn't go as far as I think it could have, or maybe that I wanted it to. And the one you had, I think, was a little bit more the Cadillac that had some more flexibility that way.
Yeah, kind of. So, like, first of all, there's 3 things that are going to determine your comfort, and that's going to be what's called your tether and your bridge and your saddle, your actual saddle itself. So the tether, which is the rope that actually attaches to the tree. So the length of that. I know you and I when we were in the tree, we were kind of playing with that.
Yep.
And I personally like it. This in the length of your tether and the length of your bridge are preferences.
Okay.
So everybody's different in that category.
Yep. It's wherever the comfort kind of was. And so when I
Yeah.
got up there, I was pretty tight at first. Like I was real close.
Yep.
And then after a little bit of time, I kind of loosened up the slack a little bit, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is
Exactly.
good. So
So yeah, so the length of the tether will help you there. Then the bridge, which is that rope that comes across from your hip to your other hip, the length of that will matter as well in terms of like hip pinch. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you experienced that at all with the tether saddle. This is one of the reasons why I like the Aero Hunter more. The tether has a fixed, and it's hard to talk about this because Tethered, the brand, is the same as a tether.
it's the same
that
type
you
of
use.
nomenclature.
Yeah. So that's where they got their name. But the tethered saddle itself actually has a fixed bridge length. You can't adjust it.
Okay.
So if you're experiencing hip pinch, there's like really no way to fix it besides kind of looping that bridge up. Whereas the Aero Hunter saddle actually
saw
has an adjustable bridge, so you can make it longer or shorter. And that will, because just the way that you sit, those
It wants to squeeze
rope.
your hips together because
Yeah,
it's pulling
you
from
got
the
it.
tree, right? Like, so it's got this triangle and it's coming around, so you can find a way to loosen it up. So mine didn't
Yeah.
have that. I was okay.
Yeah,
I didn't
you'll be
experience that too much.
That is a person-to-person thing.
Sure.
So I've talked to a lot of people who don't experience that at all.
Yeah.
And I
And
personally
if you do, it's
did.
got to be probably miserable.
Yeah, I experienced it like roughly 3 to 4 hours into a sit. And it'd be kind of miserable for
Oh, gosh.
maybe
Yeah.
like, 30 minutes until you figure it out. And I actually started like shoving like extra gloves and stuff
To
in
take the
between.
displacement off a little bit or to displace the
just
pressure.
to spread that out a little bit and remove that pressure.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, that will matter. And then also what you mentioned, kind of like that saddle riding up, it's almost giving you like a little bit of wedgie.
Yep.
And I don't know, like that might be just people who have bigger asses than others.
I don't think I have a big.
I-
I don't think I have a big gadunk. Like, I
I
think it's-
see, and I do. I've always had a bigger ass. So like that the tethered saddle has like a fixed length, which is how long like it is, and it's not all that long. Whereas the Aero Hunter saddle, it has a longer length, so you
Okay.
can actually cup your butt a little bit more with the saddle itself.
Yep.
Which will give you
makes it
more
feel like you're
comfort.
sitting in like a chair more than kind of hanging out of it a little
Right.
bit. Like it's trying.
Yeah.
Mine felt like it was trying to eject me a little bit.
Right,
So I
yeah,
wanted
it's
to
trying
pull
to
that
pull
down.
it, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So that wedgie, like, and I'm that's one of the big reasons why I switched is because every like 30 to 45 minutes, I would be like pulling on that saddle to try to pull it down.
Yep.
Like just
This is
I
what
saw
I was
you
doing.
do a
You
few
probably
times.
saw me do
Yeah,
it a
you
bunch.
like want to pull it down,
Yes.
and then it rides up after 30 minutes or so, and then you pull it down again. Whereas the Aero Hunter saddle is just longer, so it fits you.
You got more of that net down
Yeah,
there.
you got more down there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what we'll answer. So one of the questions that came through just in the comments here, Richard James asked, "How do you get the rope attached to the tree?" And he said, "I mean, like, how do you get the rope to move along with you?" And maybe this is where the bridge comes into play.
I think he's
A
maybe.
little bit of both, maybe.
So-
Because I had that. Once that bridge is in there,
Yeah.
you can pivot and move.
So,
Unless
yeah.
you're talking about like physically moving around the tree, that could be different. But real quick
Yeah.
before we get into it, my big concern when I wasn't wanting to try this, it seemed like a lot of, dicking around with rope.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it does.
Man, I don't know. That's a lot for me to mess up.
Mhm.
And it's kind of all pre-baked for you, right? Like it's all.
Yeah, that's why
There's a
they
couple
sell kits.
components and there's a kit and it makes it's actually much easier than a tree stand. You don't have to
Yeah.
lug that up there with you. You don't have to get some other thing on the tree to put the stand on it. Like it was, once you're in, you're in. And that was
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah, no ratchet straps, no messing around
Yeah,
with like ratchet
metal.
strap length, and no clanking. Yeah, and you're putting one strap on the tree. So literally, what it is it's a rope that's generally like, I don't know. I think the one that I have is like 6 feet long, and there's a loop on one end, and then there's a carabiner that has a knot on it, and it's called a pressic knot.
okay.
Which, when there's no pressure on that knot, it'll slide up and down that rope.
Although
so
you had made
adjust.
note that like maybe sometimes it can get hard to actually move
yeah,
it.
because when you I'll touch on that. So that pressic knot will slide up and down the rope, and then you got a carabiner on it. So literally, what you do is just like you have the tree in front of you, and you wrap that rope around the tree, and you feed that carabiner pressic knot through the loop on the other end.
Yep.
So you feed it through, and then once it's through, then it's literally just kind of hanging on the tree, and without pressure, that rope will just slide down the tree.
Sure.
But once you hook into
like a
it
slip
and
knot
lean,
almost.
and lean back, that pressure
It's
literally
constant.
just keeps it on the tree. So that's what holds you in, is literally tension.
Yep.
So so long as you weigh something, you can weigh 50 pounds or 300 pounds, that rope's going to stay there.
Sure.
As long as you weigh something. So then, and then what you mentioned was that knot, so you feed that carabiner back and the knot back through the loop on the end, and you're going to have like excess rope. Like you had like 3 or 4 feet of excess rope just hanging down.
That's
When
right.
you
I remember
hooked
that
in,
now. And we had to like
and
tuck
I
that
looped
in.
it in for you. Yeah, because it was just dangling there. I was like, yeah, that's an OCD thing of mine. It's
I'm
like,
glad
it's
you
gotta-
did it.
It's
man.
got to be nice.
Like I'm out here learning right now.
So once you hook in and that pressure happens and that pressic knot really tightens down on the rope, then it's really hard to move. So if it's really tight and you actually want to make it tighter, like that can be a pain. It can be a big pain in the butt because
There's
you got
something else you could do for that, right? There's some
you
mechanical.
can buy a mechanical. They call it a mechanical pressic,
Okay.
but it's also mechanical, so it can fail and it can break, or cold weather could really do something with it.
Sure.
So I just, rather than go that route, and it's extra money, I'm always trying to do things as cheap as I can, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather not use one of those, but a bunch of people do. A bunch of people like them.
Okay.
It's just up to the user.
It makes sense. I mean, how you're describing it. Were there any other points there?
It was, how do you move around the tree?
Yeah.
So literally once you hook into your tether and you get that set up and you have pressure in there, when you can, so one of the reasons people always want to know that is because they always say you can shoot 360 degrees because you're almost in like a pendulum at that point. You're attached to the tree at a point, and as you swing around, the rope always wants to bring you back to right below that that singular point. So when you swing around, that rope will stay there, and you'll just move around. It'll just get tighter and tighter on you. You'll be more tension, and it'll want to lift you up towards that knot.
Okay, that makes sense.
But in reality, I mean, as far as I've hunted, you could shoot 300. You did it. You could have shot 360 degrees around that tree with only moving like half a foot to a foot off.
Yeah. So real quick on that point, it was almost like you had to lean, like you kind of like I'm. For those of you listening to the podcast, when this is in podcast land, it's going to be really hard to know what the heck I'm saying here. But I'm almost taking my left elbow and I'm taking my back and I'm kind of like, I don't know, pivoting my shoulders and my hips. And so you're like leaning from the waist while taking your shoulders and following that line a little bit that's going through. And when you do that, your bridge is sliding through the carabiner and you're getting this extra motion. And so when you wanted to turn, you had to think about how you could slide that rope through the carabiner and then you could get that extra motion out of it. And it would lean in your favor where now you're totally opened up to the shooting draw that you have.
Yeah.
And that was really comfortable. And that was where I think some of the main power came from, because in a stand, you get to pivot from your seat, from just your hips. You don't get this full range of motion. So I'm trying to talk in the mic here because I know I'm talking away, but you get this full range of motion where in a tree stand you don't get. And maybe you can stand in a tree stand, so there's that. Then you got to,
turn.
But
like you're always
scoot your feet or whatever. But
yeah.
You're always standing.
No, I know exactly what you're trying to say, and I'm trying to figure out.
It's tricky to talk about. And for those of you listening
if
in,
you're sitting in a tree stand, you can only move above your waist. Like
Yes.
you want to keep your feet planted, because if you're sitting in a tree stand and you're facing forward, and if you were to turn all the way to left with your feet would be hanging off the edge of the tree stand because it's not that wide.
Yep.
Whereas with a saddle, you can literally rotate your whole body and just leave your toes connected to your platform. And then your shooting form's a little bit better because you're going to be rotating your whole body versus just your
and you can see around the tree. In a stand, your back is up against it.
Yeah.
And it feels pretty sketchy depending how big your platform is. You're limited a little bit, right? And so I hunch, when I do a tree stand, I have a really small tree stand because it's really lightweight and I don't like dicking around with a big Cadillac tree stand. And I also don't have enough money to buy the Lone Wolf that weighs nothing. But yet. And so with the saddle, you can peek around the tree and get your shot off.
Yeah.
And so you're not so limited by, when you get to a tree and you have your tree stand, you got to get up to that thing, look up it, determine which direction it's facing, so you're not like hunched over with a tree or a knot in your back. You got to really pay attention to, okay, if I'm drawn back, which direction am I going to face? I've done that before where I've got to a tree, forgot to do that, got the damn stand in the tree, and now I wasn't shooting the right direction.
Right.
As a right, hold my
You
bow in my
always
left
want to
hand.
shoot to your left.
So,
you always want to set
yep.
up so you to your left.
And so with the saddle, that was less of a concern.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think about it when we were setting up, and we had to
Offhand.
put a little bit of thought into it, but not nearly as much.
I was planning that out in my own head.
Sure.
And that's the only reason we had two bows with us. I had the camera. I was just trying to film Eric shooting a deer, and we didn't even see anything anyway that morning. But the only reason I pulled my bow up was because he couldn't shoot to his offhand side, and that's because I was sitting there. He couldn't shoot through.
Yeah, and there's like a tree branch there
Yeah.
too, or like another whole tree, I should say.
Whereas, like, in a tree stand, like shooting, and I'm not like there are certain times when a tree stand is better than a saddle. I know that to be true, and it just depends on the setup. So the thing about the saddle hunting or shooting in a saddle though is like you get more range of motion off to your left, which is where right-handers want to shoot off to their left, right? But you can actually, like, in a tree stand,
drop down and pivot the other. Yeah.
in a tree stand, try shooting a deer that's on your right that's picked you and knows you're there.
You got to
can't-
you got to track across your whole
can't
body.
Do that.
Yeah.
With a saddle, because that bridge slides in and out of that carabiner where it's attached, you can actually rotate your hips and get your arm over that rope.
yep.
You never had. I was in the way, so you couldn't have tried this.
Right.
But you can actually do that and still shoot. So I had multiple opportunities last year, because that was one of my biggest fears. Was like, if I set up, I have to set up where the deer's to my left. What happens if it comes to my right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I'm stuck in this saddle, and I can't rotate this giant thing around, and I don't want to rotate all the way around the tree
whole
to
tree.
get the shot.
Yeah.
So I've practiced that a few times, and you can, after practicing a little bit, you can get that offside shot pretty easily
Okay.
if you just
Makes sense. We got a
don't
call.
pull like 80 pounds.
We got one call. It's screening. If you're a prankster, I'm going to drop you in a second. If you're not, we're going to bring you on. I've been getting prank calls. That's a thing now.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Contextual prank callers. They'll feed into it for a little bit before they drop the hammer.
Dude, that sounds fun.
It's
Is
interesting.
this their cell phone number though?
Yeah, if it's someone that that's
can
no
we sign
good.
them up for some fun websites?
Oh, I can call them back. I got all these numbers recorded. So if you're a
Yeah.
prankster, you're in for a treat because I'll be having some fun with that. It says his name
There
is
is.
James out of Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
Let's take a chance. James, we're going to take a chance on you. You're live on the Where to Hunt podcast. What's up?
What the fuck are you talking about? About a camel toe? Who the fuck are you?
See what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
that's definitely
So then we're going to ban this.
That was awful. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that.
In college, the prank that all my friends played, like once one kid did it, everyone started doing it, was taking photos of their like mopeds or cars or something and putting them on Craigslist. And
Oh
putting
my
their cell
gosh,
phone
I
on it.
remember that.
Oh yeah, and they put them really cheap. And
They're
then
like, what
all
the
my
heck?
buddies,
I'm not selling my thing.
yeah, they'd call them and be like, "Hey, I'm selling. I'd like to buy your moped for $200." It's like, who are you? Well, I'm calling about the Craigslist ad. Oh, I don't know, and then
That's
it'd
pretty
take them
bad.
a while to figure it out. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Oh
it was,
man.
it was gnarly.
Certainly not talking about camel. I don't know where they come from. I think they come from YouTube. I don't know. Who knows? Weird thing to call to a deer hunting show as a prank. But so okay, well,
Right? Yeah, they're getting real popularity.
so Venato, can you hunt more trees with this style? I think we kind of covered that a little bit. I think the answer is yes.
The answer, yeah, it's for sure yes.
I mean, still with trees with a lot of branches, that's still going to be something you have to deal with.
Yeah, it's the leaners.
yeah.
Trees that lean, you can't, like, if you got a real hard lean and you want to use a tree stand, there's tree stands out there. I think Twisted Tree is one of them. Twisted Timber, maybe
Okay.
that's what they're called. They have, like, a platform a base that attaches to a tree and then actually, like, angles up and stuff like that, so you can actually sit upright. But those things are like $300 to $400.
Jeez,
So
yeah, and you got to carry it out there.
But if you
and-
do a saddle, you can actually just attach to the rope and then just the hard part's getting up the tree. It's not
Okay.
setting up once you're in it. The hard part's getting up the tree, because then if you're hunting on, let's just say, a standard tree is 90 degrees straight up. If you're hunting on something that's like an 80 degree or even like a 75 degree angle, you would have to like get up on one side of it,
Okay.
you know, so that you're up above it. And I've done this. I did it the other weekend. That's why I was thinking about it. And then you got to set your like last stick or whatever on the underside of it is where you can do it both ways depending on if you're using a platform or not. But essentially you can set it on the underside or the top side of it. And you're just going to be leaning with the tree pretty heavily.
Sure.
But if you
How's the comfortability of doing something like that?
it was not that. It was
I would feel like
kind of scary to get into.
yeah, it's a little
Because
awkward.
like when you start leaning back, like
You're still
there's,
going.
There's plenty of slack going
Yeah.
on there. But it allowed me to get in a tree and into an area that I otherwise wouldn't. Going forward, probably just do a ground blind.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like a makeshift
something on the
ground
ground or
blind
something.
like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But other than that, tree stands are like hang-on stands are pretty mobile. The only thing is like one of the things that I would run into with a tree stand is like if you're sitting in an oak and you got a bunch of knots
Sure.
that are popping out everywhere and you can't get that 3-foot section of your tree stand to set against the tree or something like that and you're dicking around with it like that could be an issue, whereas a saddle, you don't need to have the platform against the tree.
Makes sense.
You know
So
what I
less jackassing around.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Some of these questions are I wouldn't say they're repetitive, but how comfortable are they for bigger guys? We addressed that only a little bit there. I'm 200-ish pounds,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Like
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm considered a big guy. I don't know if that refers to like your
I'm
gut.
pretty much the same as you.
Um,
I seen a kid the other day who was probably close to 300 in one.
I mean, how comfortable is a tree stand for a bigger guy? Equally not great, maybe.
I'm sure you just gotta buy a bigger tree stand.
Yeah, some stronger
you
welds.
know? yeah. But I mean, I don't know. You buy the saddle for your size, so they come in waist sizes.
Oh, they do. Okay,
Yeah, so you actually like mine's a 32 to 36 waist,
got it.
but they also have like a 37 to 40, and then they have like a 41.
So you're not getting that hip thing going on.
44. No, yeah, it's built for
Whatever size you are.
Yeah, it's built for your size with a range in there. But there's like some guy, he's a bigger dude out of like Georgia or Alabama or something like that. It's like Southern Outdoors on YouTube or something like that. And I was watching a bunch of his stuff on saddles, and it was pretty informative. And he was probably close to 300.
Southern Ground?
250, maybe.
Different? Okay, I know some
Yeah,
of those guys.
250 to 300.
So
Not making fun of him if he's...
we'll piggyback. So I'm going to go back and forth. So I have questions kind of from Instagram from earlier, and I have questions coming in from the comments. And by the way, folks, like you can call the number at the bottom of the screen. You can just chat with us and ask the question directly too. Just if I get another freaking prank caller, it's going to be really frustrating for all of us. But the question was, do you guys use a platform? So when we went, we just used climbing sticks, but it was the Muddy brand, so it wasn't like an alternation. It was like a full
The
T.
Lone Wolf has alternating steps.
Yeah, which is what I have. So that wouldn't have worked. I would have had 1 foot wonder the whole time.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't have been very comfortable.
So I ran Lone Wolves last year, and so the answer is no, and there's no other reason at all besides I don't want to spend the $180 or the $250 for one. That's why. That's the only reason. I have friends who do, and
they're not large,
like
so they're pretty easy to pack out.
Yeah, it's another piece of gear. It's another thing that you got to strap to your back, and it's another couple $100. But I can't talk to the additional comfort that you would receive from one. But with like alternating steps,
It probably would be.
I think it'd be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you just got more foot space. I've been trying to devise an attachment that I can just set on top of it.
There is one. I've seen one. I
Yeah,
don't know the company, but I've only seen it. So it's not something I
It's
think
the
I could
Wild
find.
Edge.
Yeah, Wild Edge. And
Wild
someone else
Edge
commented
perch.
on here, by the
Yeah.
way, the Wild Edge perch.
Yeah.
Wild Edge
And I've
perch.
tried that. And the Wild Edge steps and the perch in general have a learning curve to them.
Okay.
So you gotta mess with them and play with them a lot. I've probably set up about 70 of those steps, and I can't get them. That's my experience with them, and I can't get them all to like
Click in or whatever.
yeah, cam over properly. So like there's been times where I've been up in a tree and on my way out, like one of them like slips and falls off, and then I gotta like step instead of 2 feet down, I gotta try to finagle my way 4 feet down because this thing's like dangling there. So I just kind of because of that learning curve, it's not that I don't want to use them. It's that for the same kind of cost
Simplicity.
and for the same, pack weight and everything like that, I can just use the muddy sticks or Lone Wolf sticks, and it's faster to get up a tree that way too.
Because you're just setting up what you would normally set up.
Right.
Not an extra piece.
Oh, the Lone Wolf sticks. So for the Lone Wolf sticks, what I did, so I had 4 of them. So I'd actually
You
set
just
up
put 2?
3 on the left side of the
Okay.
tree, and then 1 on the right side of the tree at the very top.
Got it.
So then my feet would just actually sit right on top of that.
Okay.
And that's what worked. But that's why I bought those muddies this year, is because they're two steps per.
Quick sidebar.
Yeah.
So I told you about, and I forgot it in my truck, but I have like the little L that's a rope that goes around the tree.
Yes.
That used to be when I was a kid how I'd get up in a tree one by one by one. And I told you the like World War II Mickey Mouse boots, only the white version. So I think they were called, they weren't Mickey Mouse are the black ones. The white ones are like called something else. Same concept. And those things would get stuck in these little step ladders, this little L shape. It was a nightmare.
Oh, and then when you're picking them up the rope.
Dude, it was terrible. Plus they weighed like 20 pounds. I mean, the whole experience was like a damn death trap.
Were they at least warm?
Yeah, they were. They were. But when I got my first set of climbing sticks, which were the Lone Wolf, it was a gift from my dad for Christmas. It was like the biggest game-changing life event as far as hunting was concerned. I was like, you mean I can just zip one stick around and get 3 steps?
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
and so it's interesting to see how we keep evolving as hunters.
For sure.
I don't know who else can relate to that. You know, maybe the folks that used to have to screw each one in by hand every time. Like, do you know how long it took me to screw in the thing to hang the bow?
Oh yeah, that thing.
What a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
and I'm Polish, so it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Okay, this is like my 3rd-ish glass of scotch. These are really like not heavy pours. So
No, whatever. The other thing, just I'm thinking of my head of a critic.
Just real quick, sorry. So Jared Norwood commented, the Predator platform changes the game. He was using Wild Edge steps on a platform. The platform is light, makes the sit 100% more comfortable. Shameless plug. Whatever, Jared. Thanks, buddy. I haven't heard of them before. Maybe you can tag them in here. Predator platform.
Oh, that's Tethered's.
It is.
Tethered's Predator platform. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so there's the Predator platform. I think that's $180. There's also the Out on a Limb. So there's this dude.
Out on Limb Manufacturing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's connected to Garrett
with
at
the
Modern Assassin with the Reach
Assassin
camera.
Reach, which you were using.
Yeah. So the Wild Edge guys, the Out on a Limb, and the Modern Assassin, like they're all 3 people, but they all kind of work together.
Yep, symbiotically, because there's one manufacturing company.
Right.
And the others are kind of using them for their ideas.
Yep, exactly. So Out on a Limb manufactures like the Reach camera arm for the Modern Assassin, and he manufactures all his own platforms.
Got it.
So that dude does a ton of custom work and things like that. So you can get some cool stuff out of that guy.
Yeah, and we got the ideas.
But he also has his platform's bigger as well than the Predator. So you can actually you get more foot space. So there's a little bit more comfort there. I think it's only $130.
Interesting.
But
I wonder what the weight is.
No, it's got to be more. I think that was like a show special. It's lighter than you think because it's all aluminum. They're both all aluminum.
That should be their tagline if they don't have one. It's lighter than you think.
Lighter, yeah. But yeah,
so you
it
tell
looks
girls
like
it's bigger than you
beast.
think.
Yeah. But I believe Jared. I bet you it's super nice to have a platform. I just don't want to spend the money. But one of the other things I'm thinking of, the critics be like, Anthony, you say you're so cheap, yet you're running like Muddy Pro 6 and Lone Wolf and stuff.
Yeah, but you get off Craigslist, right?
Exactly.
Because someone played a prank on the guy, and he's like, fine, I'll give them to you.
Yeah, right. Just want to shamelessly say that I buy all my stuff on Craigslist, except for the saddle itself, because I don't want to buy that. Yeah. But yeah, pretty much everything I find on Craigslist, and I travel.
Oh, cool. So I got this new screen. I didn't know I could do that.
Nice.
So this is from Kyle, who's in Hayward, Wisconsin, somewhere up north Wisconsin, something with an H too. Why can't I think of the name? Doesn't matter. After the learning process, how long does it usually take you to set up? You're pretty quick.
Yeah,
and you set up 2.
Yeah. So the thing is that the thing that's going to take you the longest by far is your climbing method. So if you're using the climbing sticks, how long does it take you to set up climbing sticks? It probably took me 10 minutes to set up all 4.
Yeah.
And then
you didn't have a platform, so that was it.
Yeah.
Short of getting a rope around a tree.
Wrap a rope around a tree.
Yep.
So
which is tricky when you But it's no trickier than you have to
figure
do the
it
same
real
thing with a
fast.
tree stand.
Yeah, because you got to wrap your safety harness around a tree.
Yep.
It's the exact same. It's the exact same rope as you would use for your safety harness.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's essentially setting up a tree stand, but don't set up the actual stand. So, however long it takes you to set up your 4 climbing sticks, and then wrap a rope around a tree. For me, that's generally sub 15 minutes. And one of the tips I highly suggest for everybody out there is find a tree that you can wrap your arms around.
Yeah, that's a
So
good,
if
because
you-
otherwise you're kind of like doing the
Yeah.
whole like.
Because the tree we were in, the reason I picked it was because it was big enough to kind of like hide both of us.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it was kind of annoying because
I
it
saw
was
you mess
big.
around for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just big. But if you're in an area where you can pick a tree, like you have 5 trees to pick from and you can wrap your arms around one, that's going to help you out a ton.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. And then, also another little tip there is
Yep.
when you're setting up your tether, which is the same rope that you would for your safety harness
Okay.
that wraps around the tree, pre-measure that at the base of the tree.
Oh, that's a
So
good piece
like
of advice.
when you're down there, pre-measure it. So then when you get up, it's already the right
I-
right length.
So I used the tethered brand one, and when you would ask, "Hey, did you figure this out?" It took me like a half a second, right? Like I had to like putz around for a minute to get the saddle thing on, the diaper, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should call it the diaper. Hashtag diaper hunting. And by the way, maybe you
Dude,
want to get it
that's what I
depends,
call
and
it.
then you'll never have to get out of the fucking tree, right? You just
Dude, you just
like we're good to go.
piss right there.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
warm.
Someone
You're
said,
not a real
I
deer
remember-
hunter unless you
I
got it
remember
depends
someone
on.
said it just looks like you're gonna have to poop the whole time.
So it was pretty easy to put that on at the base of the tree, and then when
Yeah.
I got up there, just hooked the carabiner on. But I had it too tight, thinking like, I want to be sure, and the Franken beans were pretty squished.
I was hanging up those muddy sticks, and I came down, and Eric already had it on, and I was like, all right, he's already got it on, cool.
Yeah.
And we get up in the tree, and you're like, man, this is really pulling on my groin. I was like, oh yeah, you shouldn't tighten.
You can
it all the
loosen
way.
that, and so then I did, and I started to kind of just loosen a little bit, and
Yeah.
the more I loosened it, I still was safe.
Oh yeah.
But then I got quite a bit more comfortable. So again, this is
sure.
like a really touch and feel kind of thing here. You have to really see how it's going to work for you specifically. I don't know. Once I got that loosened up, I felt a lot better.
For sure. That the tether, the rope that you wrap around the tree, that height matters a ton with your comfortability as well.
Okay.
So I personally
And that's
like
where
it.
you had the adjustability in your bridge.
I had it
too.
in the bridge, but in the tether, just where you put it on the tree. So I put yours at the same that I put mine. I
Okay.
put it like forehead level.
Sure.
Because you can wrap that rope like as high up as your arms can
Okay.
reach, or you can put it at your chest. It just depends on where you want it. And for me, it's like forehead, and that's what I put for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't know any better because you only sat once. But
Yep.
as you started using that, you would figure out like, actually, I like it at my chin, or actually, I like it a foot above my head, or whatever.
Okay.
Because that'll change your comfortability.
That's
as
good to
well.
know.
Yeah.
These are so like one of the other questions that came through. Not my credit cards. I should have my phone here. So that's good. Advice for a first timer.
With
I
a
was
saddle?
I was a first timer, and like I said, my big fear was that I had too much going on. Okay, so we have
So
we do have a-
you got
Jared.
a
I'm gonna
picture
bring
call?
you in. I know you're not a prankster, and if you were, I'd come punch you in the face. What's up, buddy? You're live on the show.
Hey man, sorry I was being that weird person that just kept texting stuff in. I was like, you know what, I should just call him. Because I
Good,
love
good on you.
the whole
Good
saddle
job.
hunting
Like,
thing.
let's just have a conversation, right?
Yeah,
Join the
for sure.
conversation. I think I put it in the comments.
It's much more fun to actually.
That
hear
you
somebody
did say it
talk.
a few times. So, I think this is great. I mean, especially now that, now as Southern guys, we hadn't really got into the whole saddle hunting. I was packing in the other day, and I have a hiking backpack, and I have wild edge steps in the bottom, all my stuff in it. But, I try to keep it at about 15 pounds because if you're rucking in for a little ways, every ounce really does count.
And when you're hoofing it out
yeah,
like you did, by the way, this guy freaking chopped up his deer and hiked it out.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, man. Hey, you got to do what you got to do in the mountains. But, yeah, man. And I hunted the Buffalo National Forest up here. We got 3 million acres of public land in Arkansas, which is pretty much all of Arkansas. But,
The whole thing.
going up there, you're honestly, you're going up and down these hills, bluffs, everything. And if you do shoot something back there, dragging it out, I mean, that's just out of the question. So you do have to, do the Western style cut and quarter, and I take game bags and all that jazz. But with the saddle, it's really increased that game, because before I'd have to, I had a Summit Specialist SD climbing stand, which I thought was a very light climbing stand, came at like 19 pounds. But then, you got to backpack that and all the other, because, we love gear. And what deer hunter doesn't have 10 pieces of gear that they may use for one specific hunt, but they have to bring it on every hunt. But once you do all that, I mean, that's the thing I think that saddle hunting has really done for me, is it really changed up my game. I can hunt a lot of different trees, and I can go a little bit further. And I mean, just the mobility of it is to me the biggest seller. And I was like, hey, even if this thing pinches my hips, or if I look funny up here, I'm gonna try it. And of course I drank that Eberhart Kool-Aid. I think the guy, every time you hear him, he plugs saddle.
Yeah.
But
actually got an email up to him. He's gonna be one of the next guests, I think.
Yeah, Eberhart loves.
That's all. I'm definitely calling in on that. That dude's the GOAT. Like, seriously, he's like the Tom Brady of deer hunting.
That's freaking great.
Yeah, he's got a ton of Pope and Young bucks. But I would totally agree with you. The reason I swapped to a saddle, or even considered a saddle in the first place, was the place we went was just under 2 miles from our, if you track that.
45-ish minutes?
Yeah,
right?
it was about 45 minutes. It was just under 2 mile walk. And it wasn't a difficult walk by any means, but I know Eric's kind of a softie, so I didn't want to take him to any of the harder stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was going 2 miles back with a Lone Wolf and climbing sticks, and that was only, minus my other gear, that itself was, 20, I think roughly 25 to 26 pounds. And I dumped that down to just the stick weight, which is 12. And the saddle weighs a pound. It's negligible.
You had two saddles in like this little mesh backpack.
Yeah,
and
that is one thing I would like to point out. The tethered saddle is much lighter than the Arrow Hunter saddle, but it's
and that's the one that I use.
Use the tethered.
Yeah, I have the Mantis, and I'll tell you on that hip. I meant to say something about that hip pinch. I had a little bit of that too. I've got white boy hips. They're a little thin. I'm not backing a lot in the back end, and I got a medium, and it's got a lot of room to play back there. And I had a buddy that he drank Kool-Aid a little before I did, and he actually, instead of how and it's hard to kind of explain on a phone, but
I have the tethered right here in my
leg harnesses. You know how it hooks into the belt? Like you can hook the leg harness into the belt. Instead of hooking it there, hook it to the side on that little thing that hangs down, so it goes over your leg and not like up in your boys.
Sure.
And that right there, it kept the saddle from riding down on me and kind of giving me that wedgie.
Okay.
And I found myself adjusting it a lot less and less hip pinch. But I'm with you. Not being able to adjust that bridge is I'd say that's kind of.
So
you'll probably see that
bridge,
as
right?
Yes.
Just so people know.
Yep. Anybody watching, I'm just going to explain that quick, Jared. This is the bridge, this piece right here.
The rope that connects one end from the other that goes up from you.
This would be on each of your hips, and then this bridge comes across. But yeah, no, I mean, seriously, the Arrow Hunter saddle, as far as the bridge goes, it's literally a lineman's belt. So I mean, I'm not a fan of modifying a saddle or anything like that. But if one were to cut off this bridge and replace it with a lineman's belt, an adjustable lineman's belt, I don't think you would have any sort of issue. And then you'd have an adjustable belt, an adjustable bridge.
And the rope mans, I've got 2 rope man ones. I use one on my climbing rope. What's the name I'm looking
Lineman's?
for? Not your tether, lineman rope. That's it. I use that, and then I actually I went to one on my tree tether as well, because sliding that Persic knot up and down got to be kind of cumbersome.
Yeah.
Especially because I was using Wild Edge steps, and Wild Edge steps are great on oak trees. We have a lot of pine trees down here, and like you said or mentioned earlier, they'll slide 3 foot down that tree and, make your butthole tighten up, when you're 20 foot up a tree. So.
For sure. Yeah. No, and that's I mean, they're great. Like, I forget the guy's name who makes the Wild Edge steps, but he hunts an area where the trees work out great. And if the trees are great, like you said, if you got oaks and stuff like that have good solid bark, like, it'll work out well. But yeah, no, I totally agree with that, man. And just back to the weight thing, I mean, when you're walking that far, it matters. Like, that 10 pounds that you shed from a tree stand, it matters a lot.
Yeah.
And another thing that we all take into consideration is scent control. If you're walking 2 miles in the state of Arkansas with a humidity at 110%, I mean, you're gonna get sweaty, son.
Oh man, I hate it. In Wisconsin, I'm in Wisconsin,
exactly.
and I'm only in 70 degrees, and I like sweat through my clothes.
Yeah, you sprayed yourself with that. What did you say that was called? The
Oh, I use nose jammer.
Nose jammer. I was about to call it nut buster, but I was
I
like,
use nose jammer.
smelled like
I bring it
vanilla.
with me. Yeah. But anyway, you
Completely
were
different
saying
thing.
you were saying like scent control with that stuff.
Yeah, so the lighter the pack, the less you're gonna sweat hiking up and down those mountains.
It's very true.
Hiking even in even in the lowlands that I hunt, because I'm a flatlander.
But you're not from Illinois. That's important to call out, Jared, because that's a problem.
Oh, okay, I don't
like
know
those
the
working
slang,
class bow hunter guys.
Gotcha. So I hunt a lot of river bottoms where there's no elevation. It's all flat. It's all hardwood flats and pine thickets. And I grew up in South Arkansas, and I set up my big leaf there. But I've tried to expand my horizons and hunt a lot of WMAs in the state. And again, being in Central Arkansas, I'm about an hour and a half from anywhere in the state, so I can get pretty much to any of these WMAs within an hour and a half, 2 hours. And some of the topography is different. If you cut Arkansas into fours, I mean, you really have 4 different diverse habitats for deer, and they move differently. I mean, the rut's even different in all 4 parts of the state. So, that being lighter, being able to climb any tree, it opens up so many. And I have different sticks. Like, I'll use the Wild Edge steps if I don't have any time constraints. I'm getting in there early. I can pick the right tree. I can take my time because that's another thing about saddle hunting, and I know I'm going all over the place, but I've got so many ropes now. It just seems like it looks like I'm a puppet going up this
What do you need that rope for? I don't know what you need all this rope for. I don't know. That's what they have in every movie. It's a big rope.
What's that from?
Exactly. Like, I honestly feel like I'm trying to
what the fuck's with the
climb
rope?
Everest every time I'm on the side of this tree. Because the Wild Edge steps have all those ropes, and then I've got alignments there. I've got my tree tether. I've got I mean, it's just a ton of. I mean, you've got a rope to your backpack. You've got a rope to your bow. By the time I'm up the tree, I'm so tangled up in ropes. I mean, it's almost it's a calamity really, and it just takes a long time. But I also run like you all the XOP or Lone Wolf, whichever. I don't even remember which brand that I bought off Craigslist. You dang right I did. And they have the rope mods, and that's fast.
Oh yeah.
But again, they're 32 inches long, so if you're trying to put those on a backpack with a platform with everything else, I mean that's really. I think you're packed when you're dealing with saddle hunters, and you look on sattlehunter.com and all that stuff. I mean, packs are as big of an issue as milkweed is. They just picking the right pack to get all that gear in is a real big deal.
It is, and it's different. Like, I mean, it's different for every single saddle hunter because every single saddle hunter is going to have a different type of setup.
But dude, not having a tree stand on your back, like even with some of the stuff, we didn't get anything too thick, but there was like one spot where we had to duck under some bullshit, and then we had to climb up a hill to avoid a train, and so like not having a giant square on your back was really helpful, man, to crawl under this stuff, because I can't tell how many times I'm in the woods ducking under crap and then I can't move because I'm stuck from a freaking branch, and it's clink, clink, clink.
Well, and
dink, dink, dink. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's
and I know
less clunky. You're more like a ninja.
And that's and I practice a lot of like I've killed one of the biggest bow deer I ever killed. I killed last year, and I killed him on the WMA here. And I was literally walking with my climber on my back, down like on the side of a mountain, going to my boat to eat lunch, and then was going to come back and set up on another place. And the deer that I was literally in there after came across the saddle right in front of me, you know, upwind of me, just, you know, everything kind of aligned. And if you've ever tried to shoot a bow with a summit stand on your back, it's not easy.
Dude, no.
I haven't tried that, although maybe I
have
should
considered
practice that way. I
for
mean, you
sure.
got to practice how it's going to go down, Jared. So
Yeah,
maybe,
well,
you
that
know,
was
shame
not
on you for
my-
not,
practice how
being
to
a
hunt,
fucking
bro.
badass. Like, what the heck, man?
You better
Yeah,
start
yeah,
putting
not
on
being
all
for,
your
hey,
camo
I killed a
and-
deer. It's on my wall, bruh. So, you slow down on the shaming there. But yeah, I mean, I hit him. I actually I shot high and kind of it worked out to my advantage. But yeah, I was, you know, I called my wife after, and I was like, I got the deer, and she was like, oh, how far was it? You know, what tree were you in? I was like, I was just walking. She was like, what are you doing? You know, and like no, I was just literally walking to my boat to eat. But you know, it is, you know, the
So I got my
comfort.
first deer.
I think while, you know, you see, you know, now Wild Edge has the Yarick trophy line. I think came out with their saddle. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not
The Yarick,
endorsing
yeah.
them, so they can't get mad at me.
The Yarick
And,
is an arrow hunter, just to make that clear. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Is it the same thing? I didn't. I know Wild Edge.
It's not the
Release.
exact. It's made by Arrow Hunter.
Okay. So it's like
Yeah.
XOP Lone Wolf kind of deal. Like they're
Yeah.
It's one of the
much same
same
thing.
almost, yeah.
Yep.
Hey,
I mean,
Jer-
yeah, go ahead.
Hey, we got one more call behind you, and we're getting close to time, but I'm going to drop you
Yeah.
off.
Hey,
But
good
that was
talking to you
good.
guys.
That was
Thanks
good.
for talking saddle stuff. And
For sure.
hey, Eric, I'm going to send you a picture of that deer I saw on Monday. I'm going to send it to you right now on your phone, just so you can say how horrible it was for me to watch that deer
I
walk
talked
off
about it on
50
the Rec
yards.
Club.
So,
Yeah, you poor bastard. I'm so
All right,
sorry.
brother.
All right,
Y'all
we'll
have a
catch you
good
All
soon.
right. Thanks for the call, Jared. Appreciate it.
bye.
See ya.
All right. Hey, Dr. Schultz out of Watertown, Wisconsin. You're live on the podcast. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. What you got some saddle questions or answers or experiences?
No experience. I was just curious, you know, obviously weight's a huge point here, but any other benefits hunting out of saddle?
I mean, we've been rattling off quite a bit, so I've only done it once. So
I tuned in on the late too, so.
What's that?
no, that's
Say
okay,
that again?
man.
No, I said I tuned in a little late, so maybe I missed something.
No,
but-
no big deal at all. So like, it was my first time ever hunting out of one, and the quick hit response to benefits, tree selection increases, mobility increases. You get less weight on your back. You're not walking around with this clunky thing, so you're less sweaty. So that goes to scent control, more mobility in the actual saddle than a tree stand as far as shot placement and what you can do with shooting. I don't know. Did I miss anything there? I might have.
No, that covers it. Are you hunting public or private land?
Public.
Public. You hunting Mud Lake?
You know who we're
Yeah,
talking
right
to?
around.
No, I see
Yeah, right.
where he was from. Yeah. Yeah. Generally, you know, walking through those marshes, those swamps, and kind of those thicket areas when you're trying to get away from people, just having that mobility where you're not getting caught in branches, is one of my biggest reasons. And then weight, of course. And like Eric said, the other big one that I would point out is the amount of shots you can take out of a tree. So that to me is kind of one of the reason I switched it all was just the weight, just pure weight. That was it. But the amount of shots that you can take off your offhand side and the amount of trees you can get into really increases with a saddle. I mean the tree factor, you know, with a mobile or a hang on tree stand, you're probably looking at like 9 out of 10 trees you can get into. With a saddle, you're looking at like 9.2. But to me, like that 0.2 might be the difference of being able to get in a tree or not. So that's kind of my take on it. But other than that, you know, it's not really, there isn't really a huge issue. If you already got a nice lone wolf setup and you don't want to swap it, and because they are expensive, that's the other big thing. Saddles are, you know, minimum starting price on them is $200, and then you're going to need the ropes,
Right.
and you can get the ropes yourself. But
You
if
gotta
you're buying the
finagle it.
ropes,
I would get a kit. Like I
would.
wouldn't trust myself with a rope.
Yeah, and they charge $55 to $65 a piece for a rope. So and you need to at least 2 of them, if not more. Some people like Jared calling in, he wanted 3. So then you're looking at $300 to $400 in a setup. So it is expensive for sure. If you don't have an issue with the weight of your stand or anything, and you're pretty good with your stand setups where where deer are generally going to come from off to your left, I have nothing to say that would convince you to swap to a saddle. I think they can
Gotcha.
be. I think they can. Yeah, I think they can be a little bit more comfortable depending on what type of. Do you run a hang-on setup right now?
Yeah, I run an XOP.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a great comfortable stand. I don't have
I run
anything.
a pretty cheap Menards Big Dog stand. It's like $15.
I don't have anything that if you're comfortable with that and you're happy with it and you're good walking in and out with it. No, I mean there isn't really a huge reason for you to switch.
That's a good
Yeah.
question.
Now,
dude.
did you have a problem, shooting out of your saddle when you first started, like form or anything like that? I mean, did it take some getting used to, or?
I mean, it'd be like it's kind of
You're
like
gonna
when
want to
Eric-
practice a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
but
when
like,
Eric first got in it, like it's
I was
freaky.
trying to draw a little bit just to
And
like.
Eric only thought that he could shoot like 45 degrees to his left, and I was like, no, rotate your hips. And he was like, what? And he started rotating his hips, and he was able to shoot all the way directly behind his back.
It was like I entered a new dimension. I was like, whoa, this is
It'd be like-
something, man. Because it felt so natural. It wasn't uncomfortable or out of place. It wasn't forced. It was literally like it was like a natural position for your body to sit in.
Yeah, like when you stand up in a hang on, and you hear the deer coming in, so you grab your bow, you stand up, you get ready, and you kind of like shuffle your feet around and whatnot, and you get in position.
Yep.
Like that scenario is much easier to do in a saddle. So
All right.
because you're just literally swinging with your hips rather than shuffling your feet around. And like me personally, when I used to run my Lone Wolf setup, I would have stuff on my platform as well. Like I would have stuff tucked under my seat, kind of, and every now and then you like kick a buckle or whatever, and it just.
Dude, I played Plinko in the woods. Shit's dropped down and hit every freaking climbing second way down. Tink, 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 tink. I'm like, no.
Yeah. No. So like I would say that saddle will get you a lot better. And then people, and I'm not a good enough quote unquote archer to know this, but people will say your form is much better. You get a better T form out of a saddle because your body, you're kind of like standing up the whole time in it. Or when you see a deer coming in, you can like easily raise up without a lot of movement. And people always say you want like the T form when you draw your bow, like a perfect, almost like 90-degree angle. And you never want to like bend at the arms. You won't.
Yep.
I think you want to bend at the hips. You don't want to just bend your arms.
Right.
So in a saddle, it's much easier.
You're already
to
kind
do
of
that.
standing.
Yeah.
What I will say, and I know we've been doing all the talking here,
No, that's
is that be prepared to make sure you can hang things in different places. Like you did a good job of taking my quiver. Like I have my fanny pack on. Just make sure you have enough hooks to deal with all of your stuff. Because in a tree stand,
systems.
Yep, but it's a little bit different. Like you mentioned, a tree stand, you put your stuff under your seat.
Yeah.
In the saddle, you don't have that. So you want to prepare for that a little bit.
Yeah, some people will just leave their fanny pack on the whole time or whatever. And I'm a big fan of fanny packs. Like when I pack stuff in, I just rather have that. It's smaller and I can just literally wrap it around a tree and connect it. So I didn't do that with you because that tree was so big. Yep. But you saw I did it with the small tree behind us. I just wrapped the fanny pack and clipped it on. But anyway, back to your original question was, is there an issue shooting out of it? I mean, after 10 arrows, you're gonna be just fine. It's gonna be just as easy as shooting out of a regular tree stand.
All right.
Yeah.
Are you gonna get one? Do you have one?
All right.
I'm not sponsored by anybody with that, so I'm just curious.
You want to try one?
How about you? Are you going to a saddle now?
I feel like I want to pretty bad. I just a tree stand feels like a pain in the ass to some degree. I don't know how else to say it without being mean to tree stands. I hunt a lot on the ground. I think safety is pretty important. I got 2 kids. The number one injury in the woods is falling out of a fucking tree stand. And if the tree stand is a safety harness, I felt a lot better, honestly, out of that. You don't have to take that risk of going from climbing stick to tree stand. And we all know it's not so easy to have your safety harness in the whole way up the tree. It's kind of a pain in the ass. And so, a lot of us might preach it, but I don't think everyone's doing it. And, and that for that reason, I was doing a lot of ground hunting, which is exciting after you watch Whitetail Adrenaline for 4 years. We all think we're good still hunters, and that's not the case. Yeah. So I think the saddle hunting is here to stay. I think it's intriguing, and after trying it, I feel pretty good about it. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of pros. And the comfortability was the one drawback that would have prevented me, and the complexity. It's not complex, and it was more comfortable than I anticipated. So, to quote Shark Tank here, for those reasons, I'm in.
Yeah, I will add, I do have certain scenarios where I'll still use a tree stand. So one of the things, like using a tree stand,
private property, right? If you just want to keep it up.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. When you want to do a permanent tree stand, and you just want to hang it and leave it. So when I'm hunting, like I hunt that area that you do as well. I hunt Mud Lake, and I hunt the Waterloo area, and I hunt down in Jefferson as well, kind of Lake Mills. I hunt all over that whole area. And there are certain hunting out of a tree stand for so many years, you get used to looking at a tree and going, I need the trail to be on my left side, and that's how I want to set it up. So there are certain trees, and when you're in a saddle, that your off side is now the left side because you're facing the tree rather than facing away from the tree. So there are certain setups that I know if a deer comes through, it's going to come through on my left. And if that's the case, I'm just going to use a tree stand. And if it's not far, like if it's only, like I have a couple spots that are off, like, I mean, it's a crap walk. There's no parking lot and you're just dragging through a swamp, but it's only a quarter mile or something. I'm going to take a tree stand in there because those trees that are set up in that area, all the trails are off to the left. So hunting out a tree stand in that scenario isn't an issue because you're going a short distance and all the deer are coming in on your strong side anyway.
I would say if you intend on sleeping in the woods because you have a 3-week-old baby and you're really tired, saddle's pretty safe.
Yeah.
Tree stand, I don't want to deal with getting woken up when I have the safety harness engaged.
Dude, I have found there are definitely, you know how you can nod off in a tree stand? And you have your safety harness, so you just
in the military, they call that bobbing for
tight.
cock. I'm just saying.
When you're in a saddle, there are very comfortable ways to take a nap. I can say that for sure.
I started to think about that, but I was like, well, I'm with Anthony. I don't want him to judge me for sleeping. So I'll stay away.
No. Any other questions or any other thoughts, man?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, if you ever want to check it out, I mean, we live pretty close to each other. I see you're kind of.
Yep.
If you ever want to check it up, just find me on Instagram. It's Deer Vein, and I'll meet you in a parking lot somewhere, and we go try it out.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Catch you later, man. Thanks for the call.
All right. How'd you get?
Cool, man. I think that makes the show. We're past by 9 minutes. It's not a bad thing at all. But, thanks, everybody, for all the questions. We'll be sure to jump back into some of the comments of these to address anything we might have missed. And it looks like you guys kind of helped answer each other's questions in the comments, so we appreciate that. Hope everybody has a great night, a good Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. We'll resume our normal schedule of Tuesday. So next Tuesday we'll be live again from 7 to 8 p.m. and 6 to 6:30 for the Rut Radio if you're interested in that. Sponsored by Heated Hunt. So everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Catch you later.
Final words?
Yeah. No, appreciate the invite.